Hello, my name is Brian LaFauci, and I'm the owner of One Sports. We are an indoor-outdoor sport facility that focuses our efforts on being the best place for athletes to get the top-notch athletic training and the best place for our parents to watch in the comfort of our 6,000 square foot pub and banquet room. So when I first left the military, I actually had already started being an entrepreneur. I had a real estate company that we started probably a couple of years after I joined the military and was still operational when I left the military. So one of the things that was a big piece for me that I noticed was that with a strong background on the military side, and also like a strong educational background. So outside of the military at the time, I was also employed full-time as a school psychologist. I just found that I was using a majority of the skill sets that I had learned on the military side in my day-to-day entrepreneurial life. And they were definitely getting me further and kind of giving me more of an advantage and a leg up than a lot of the stuff that I gotten from the traditional 6-year education program that I went through with the school psychology side. So that was a big piece for me, was to have the structure of understanding like how to build strong operations, how to create like statements of work, and how to hold people to like a standard was a piece that came out of it. Also got a ton of experience as a leader on the military side that I wasn't really getting as a school psychologist. For the most part, in school psychology, it's a small team, and you're really responsible for yourself and your caseload. Whereas when I would go to my National Guard duty and work there, it would be a completely different construct where I was in charge of, anywhere from a group of 10 to when I was a commander, then, you had like 100 people working under you at a point in time, and you're responsible for everything going on under that. So I got a lot of those leadership qualities on the military side that weren't really there for me on the civilian side. One of the pieces that's interesting with starting your own business is the amount of hurdles that you have to go through just to become really an official business. As a business consultant, one of the things that I'm always really push upon people when I'm helping them start their business from my experience and from helping other people as well, is that whenever you decide, hey, I want this to be a business, really what you're doing is you're usually taking something that you enjoy or you like or you see potential in, and you're formalizing the structure around it. So what does that really mean? It really means that all of a sudden now we have to worry about things that when it was just something we liked doing, we didn't necessarily have to worry about. Things like licensing and permitting and legal structures are all things that all businesses kind of go through, right? One of the things that always helps me, and I recommend to anyone, is there's great classes out there to really kind of start to dig into what you're going to need to get your business off the ground. Center for Women Enterprise offers phenomenal classes just to help people kind of work through those decisions. Those are often the decisions that people get most kind of confused about or uncertain about. So I always recommend using the resource partners like CWE to kind of work through that, because licensing for me as a sport facility is going to be completely different than licensing for someone else who maybe owns a restaurant, or someone who's looking to get into the medical field, or someone who maybe is going into construction. So what's required is night and day, and it also changes based on what town or state you're in. So how do you muddle through all that? How do you muddle through to make sure that you're doing all the right things and taking the legal steps to make sure you're covered on all angles? My recommendation is always use your resource partners for that stuff, because they are there to help you, give you the information and guide you through that process. Especially if it's the first time you've done it. One of the things that really helps people is checklists. and step-by-step guidance, and the resource partners like CWE do a phenomenal job of providing those kind of step-by-step guidance to getting yourself into business. As a sport complex, you can probably imagine that our land and our facility that we operate on is fairly large. So one of the big things that we had to kind of consider going into this venture, prior to this, a lot of our real estate purchases, although we had done residential and commercial real estate, were not of the scale of an indoor-outdoor sport complex. So one of the big things we had to consider was financing and how we're going to kind of tackle this project. That turned to be a really good exercise, a very good learning process for us as well. And some things you learn while you're in it, and some things you learn after you've done it. For those of you that are looking at, okay, we want to step into some kind of business, and there's going to be some financial need there. The easiest place to start is, first off, get your personal stuff in order, right? So if you have good credit, great. If your credit needs a little work, and that's something you want to get squared away as you're leading up to the process of getting financing, because that's always a big thing that they're going to look for. Second thing is putting a team around you that maybe a financial institution would look at and say, all right, I have comfortable in the knowledge base of this team that they're going to be successful. So if you are good at a specific part of the business, that's great. But a lot of times when we take a hobby or something we like to do and then turn it into a business, we find there's gaps in our skill set that need to be filled in order for that business to be successful. And if we see gaps, then that means that the lenders who are going to give us money, they'll see gaps too. So my suggestion is always build a strong team that encompasses all of your strengths and weaknesses. A good SWOT analysis is always really important when going into any kind of financing, because you can really look at it the same way that whoever's going to fund you is going to look at it and say, hey, do you have all the skill sets that you're going to need in order to pull this thing off? An example of that is if you are a very good hairdresser, then that's a skill set. So if you were to go to a bank and say, listen, I want to start my own beauty salon, you would have one of the key skill sets that they need, knowing how to cut hair. What they might look at is, well, all right, do you have the financial level of comfort to run a business? Or what about, have you ever managed people before? Right. So all these things come into account when you're looking at getting financing. And so the two ways you fill those gaps are, one, you can get training on it, or two, you actually go and you hire someone or bring someone on your management team or on your mentor team that helps fill some of those gaps. So team building when looking at financing is really important. One of the other things I would strongly recommend when looking at financing any project is, no matter what size, is going with the 75-125 rule. So whenever you're going to go for financing, you're going to put together projections. And what I suggest in those projections is when you look at what you think you're going to make for income, cut that back by about 25%. So you are showing on your projections about 75% of what you think you can make. And the reason why I say that is financial institutions are usually very used to seeing things that are overinflated. So if you can go to them with numbers that are more realistic, they'll identify that. And it also gives you a buffer to maybe if we don't hit those goals, there's a buffer in there for you to be able to say, well, we didn't hit 100% goals, but we knew we could do well even if we came a little short. And then the 125 piece of that is I like to overestimate our expenses by about 25%, bringing them to be 125% of what we expect. So the 75-125 rule is a great way to put together financial projections. And lastly, if you think you're going to need $100, you'll probably need $120. Always keep that in mind. Whenever you finance anything, it usually comes up that there's a piece of whatever you thought you needed you didn't think of. So never be afraid to take a little bit of that extra money. Usually when it's financed over a long period of time, it makes minimal difference on the month-to-month payment. And it's a lot easier than going back to an institution saying, hey, I need more money. So before we got into the indoor sports arena, I think, we went into it thinking we had a really good grasp of like, hey, this is something we know. I had a bunch of kids in sports. My partner had a bunch of kids in sports. We were comfortable with real estate purchases, and we both had a military background. My partner was retired as an Army major. I left as an Air Force captain. And so we had some really good operational skills we were bringing to the table. And we felt really strong about that. What I didn't realize is when we stepped into this project, I didn't take into full account that when you scale up into something much larger than you've ever done before, that everything scales with that. So if you're used to, and I talk a little bit about that financially. So if you're used to every oops, hey, we got this issue we got to address costing $100. When you scale up, the oops, we got an issue that we have to now address usually costs $1,000. So there's this scale of everything that happens and that we experienced when we moved into this indoor sports facility, because everything was just bigger. So revenue could be bigger, but issues were always going to be bigger too. So one of the things that we learned a little hard lesson on, and going back, I'm like, all right, I would have done a little differently, is one, would have overfinanced ourselves a little bit more. And two, I would have cash reserved a little more because those, finances usually are the crux of any issues you run into. And when you have to overcome them, can be the biggest kind of things to overcome. Other than that, I would say we had a little learning curve on mixing together a operating business along with what is in essence a real estate company with tenants, which is what we do here. At our facility, we operate the sport piece of it. And we also have tenants that operate their own businesses inside that are complementary, like a gym and a physical therapy and things like that. And when you merge all that together, there's a lot of interplay that needs to be thought of. And some of that got missed, right? And some of it was a little bit of learning on the fly of how do we secure the building when so many people are coming in and out, almost like a mall, right? How do you secure a mall? When do you lock the doors on a mall? Very similar situation here. When do we actually lock down the facility? Do we alarm our facility or not? Was a big discussion based on okay, there's going to be all these people that have access in and out at different times. Is an alarm going to be a benefit or a headache to us? So the operation piece of managing a business with rental tenants was something that I think was a good learning lesson for us. When we look to the future here at One Sports, having just come out of COVID, it was an interesting start for us. We are now 3 years running, and as all of you know, so it's where we are right now, December 2021, a good half of that time period was COVID time. And as an indoor sport facility, we obviously had a lot of restrictions for a long time. So a full operating season has almost never happened here until now. And although we're still dealing with COVID, we're pretty much restriction free to do everything we need to do at this point. So the way forward for us, when we looked forward, when we first bought this business and started this up, the way forward for us was to buy a second location within a short period of time. And that is definitely still our way forward. I think COVID definitely put a good learning check on us in what we would need to do before we were able to expand and do that. And And that was really a blessing and a curse at the same time, because having gone through what we went through, you learn so much that you would have never learned. I would have never been in positions that I was forced into, by choice. So we learned a lot and we grew a lot, and we're a much smarter operating company now because of it. And we still want to move forward, which is good. Short-term goals are we're growing our outdoor space. Indoor sport complexes typically without outdoor space really kind of struggle during those summer months. So we're growing our outdoor space to expand our potential in that time. The advice I have for other veterans going into any sort of entrepreneurship is, one, really realize what it is that you have because of your veteran experience and what you've learned, and understand that that is not something that everybody has. That is definitely a very unique learning opportunity, and those things directly play into your ability to be successful as an entrepreneur. So take advantage of that. So to go into it knowing that you've been taught things that a lot of other people have, both operationally and leadership structure wise, and chain of command, all that stuff that really directly relates well. There's great programs out there. There's some good funding programs out there for veterans. And most importantly, veterans have the only SBA program out there that is solely dedicated to one group of people, and that's veterans. So with the VBOC, there is no other program out there that only can serve one group of people, and the Veteran Business Outreach Centers do that. So they specialize in helping veterans start and grow their entrepreneurial dreams. So absolutely take them along on their journey for startup growth and for end phase, as they will be instrumental in helping you. They've been instrumental in helping me. They were a big piece of what we did here. I work and support them as well, and hopefully we'll continue to do for a long time. So use the resources out there. It's the best piece of advice I could give to veterans looking to grow their business, and start a strong network of people around you. Don't do it in a silo.